So hopeful.
I could be wrong, but it could be Ashes of Creation.
Fingers crossed. Well, we'll probably never know what actually went into the unusually amicable split between Square Enix and IO Studios earlier this year. Square CEO Yosuke Matsuda did say that one of the reasons they didn't contest IO's rights to the Hitman franchise was that, quote, I believe it wouldn't be Hitman unless it was Hitman by IO. While IO did get the rights to Hitman, they will no longer be allowed to work on Kane and Lynch sequels.
Square Enix thinks that the IP is dead.
That's what that means. I agree. It wouldn't be Hitman unless it's Hitman by IO. What corporation has ever said that ever, if
Never.
they cared?
No, they just think that they can't fuck its corpse for money.
Kinda, yeah.
Sorry to be that blunt about it, but that is exactly what's happening. I mean, when you talk about these mergers of these studios, you do understand that once they're acquired, that there's now cost cutting measures in place that where the people who were running the actual company couldn't see where to take those losses. EA is not. EA doesn't care. EA doesn't care about the people that it just absorbed, and it'll fire anyone that it wants to because it's EA and they don't care. Square Enix now does the same thing. Square Enix is the Japanese EA.
I don't know.
They're on their way.
Okay.
They're
Right.
on their way.
I don't think they're there yet. EA has been consistently voted like the worst company in out of all companies that exist, not just gaming companies. I don't think Square Enix is quite there, and that was even before this loot box shit.
But they're on their way.
Their business model is identical. Their business models are identical.
Yeah, they're getting there. I mean, absorb a ton of small publishers, use the ones you can, shutter the ones you can't.
Yep.
And their DLC microtrans strategy is picking up. There are a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
They don't have the track record that EA has had.
No.
I mean, EA's got 30 years of garbage under
Here's
their
the
belt.
thing. They're Japanese EA and they're 2 steps behind EA, but they're adapting the EA model. That's why the conversation around loot boxes, around microtransactions, DLC, free to play, pay to win are so important. And we've been in this the weird thing is that we've been a part of this conversation for the better part of 10 years across 10 years across the spectrum of all of our shows. And we've been speaking out against microtransactions, cash shop items, even cosmetic items being put into things like MMOs because we realize how much it upsets the balance of the economy that exists. It upsets the balance of the game incentive that exists because the best stuff is hidden behind a paywall. That goofy fucking and here's the real thing. That goofy fucking Nika Blart Mall Cop item. If there was an Overworld NN that dropped that, people would be camping that shit for 3 fucking years.
Absolutely.
For 3 years until everyone who wanted it got it and moved on. But no, instead they went, yeah, we can get people to fork over money for that. And they did it. And I think that, now they've got to reap the consequences of what they've sown. And Square Enix now has a really difficult decision because they're starting to see the other side of loot boxes. They're starting to see the other side of microtransactions. And everyone is starting to see why that shit is problematic in an online game environment. And now that's forcing the conversation of are loot boxes gambling?
Yeah.
And it is my opinion that yes, they are. It's gambling that's marketed towards children. And that's wrong. Because listen, as adults, we can sort of navigate the world of gambling. We can do that cost-benefit analysis. But if there's a kid who really wants that one fucking item, he's going to beg, borrow, and steal until he gets the fucking resources to get that item.
Right. As adults, we have a concept of what $50 is, but $50 out of mom's purse is very different.
And therein lies one of the big differences between Final Fantasy XI and Final Fantasy XIV. Because Final Fantasy XI was a game that fundamentally treated its audience like adults, right? They said, listen, if you can't do it, if you can't get the item, fuck you. That's on you. And that's on your time investment. That's why they had to have that disclaimer at the beginning of FF11, like, hey, if this ruins your life, that's your fucking fault.
Never forget your friends, your family, your work, or whatever it was.
And why?
I did say that every time.
Yeah.
And why? Why was that included?
It was in there as their disclaimer against everything.
No.
No?
It was in there because Sony got dragged through court after they put out EverQuest. Because people were going, I don't have self-control, and they're adults, right? And they're going, hey, I don't have self-control, and your game is at fault. And every time the courts have gone, yeah, no, that's your own responsibility. But the video game companies realized the financial opportunity that exists and took it. And they took it slowly enough that we didn't even notice because every game became connected. Now it's a part of first-player games. It's essentially first-player games, and now it's actually something that matters because it's taking money out of our wallets to be able to do it. That's the difference. There's the difference between your game genies and a fucking, a microtrans, or having a code to unlock a piece of, whatever, and having a microtrans item is the $5 that it costs us. And there are some of us who can go, yeah, I can live without it. But there are those that do not have self-control.
Yep.
Let's be real here. There are people who absolutely do not have the power of self-control. And they're adults now. And they can, and
they
if they
still don't have that power.
And if they can't identify that behavior, then we need to, as voices within this community, and say, listen, there's got to be some protections against them because these companies, we've seen these whales come out and spend $15,000, and we see that and we go, well, that's clearly a rich person that has too much money.
Or is it?
Or is it? That could be, as we had identified last week, that could be some kind of, wiki company that has more resources at its disposal trying to figure out RNG percentages.
It does still happen, though. I knew a person who got a sizable inheritance when a relative died and blew it all on a mobile game.
And that's the thing, is that there's a confluence of things because we've been, as a generation, economically depressed for 10 years longer than we should. There was a legitimate economic depression, and we couldn't get out there and find jobs. And so we went out and found jobs and made jobs for ourselves, playing video games on the internet, or starting YouTube channels and finding an audience. And media has basically kept us out of the media by not hiring us. And so we went and created our own media. But that shit's a bubble. Nothing can exist outside of the larger system. That's what a fucking bubble is. And bubbles don't work. They always burst at some point. So, if we're going to
Nintendo.
If we're going to be real about this, then look at the actual economic factors that are happening, not just in our own little sphere of influence and our own little sphere of conversation, but look at it in the wider picture, man.
Well, and look at it like, who is terrified in this generation right now is casinos, because millennials do not go to casinos. Like our generation, we do not go there. It's just, they're terrified of it. We don't ever gamble, except do we?
I was gonna say, we always, because and this is a realization I just made with myself that I kind of always knew was there. But yeah, you're right. I don't go to casinos because anytime I've ever been, I give them $40 and I walk out with nothing.
Yes.
I don't have the money to gamble. But apparently I have the money to get all the Halloween skins from Overwatch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing, is that we are incentivized differently, right? Like, we get something out of that exchange, right? That's why this is gambling, right? If you win at gambling, you get something out of that exchange. It's called fucking money. You get money back. We're not even getting money back. We're getting digital fucking items that we've given value. We gave that shit value.
And I have a legendary card now that will make my deck win.
The gaming industry has found a way to make gambling work, but in this case, they don't have to pay anything out and they get everything. Even when we're quote-unquote winning and quote-unquote getting what we want, we're still just giving them money.
Listen. Listen. We, those that have been listening to Limit Break Radio for a long time, and I'm going to assume that that's the majority of you, you already know that we've identified the problem of incentive, that since everything is fair across the board, there's no incentive towards anything. I think Square Enix is moving towards loot boxes in Final Fantasy XIV to get high-powered items because we identified for so long the value in that. So if the RNG chance exists at 99 cents a pop, how many people you think are going to take it to get that shortcut to endgame? They'll put it into endgame, but they'll also put it into loot boxes
I'd be
with
so
a unique
pissed if that was a
skin.
thing.
Hang on. No, shut up. What, Nico, what was that?
I would be really pissed if that became a thing.
I think all of us,
Yes.
all of us would be
I'd be okay with that.
I can see your line of logic, but depending on how the current situation right now with what's going on between the different governments around the world and the gaming industry, depending on how that shakes out, that could have to change.
Yeah. Listen, we've been sitting here trying to hand signal. I'm saying cut the last two stories, dipshit. We're into the final conversation.
Yep, got it.
It's like we've never done hand signals before.
To be fair,
Fuck's sake.
Kelly, I